Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and I just wanted to drop in for a quick second to tell you that this podcast is really gaining popularity, and in order for us to continue growing like this, I'd love it if you could rate and review us on iTunes. Plus, I'm always excited to hear feedback and continue to improve our content based on what you want to hear. I know I'm in. Are you? Was George Karl right to criticize Melo and Kenyon Martin for not having fathers while growing up? How do coaches need to communicate with their players now compared to 30 years ago? Do you realize how good Jabari Parker is? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast and another edition of our weekly show with Coach Dave DuFour. Dave, we've got a lot to talk about this week as we're moving in towards Christmas. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all those things. We're allowed to say Merry Christmas now, right?
I think we are, yeah. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's the same time this year. It's very exciting when they align.
Kwanzaa starts on Monday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know, this is Armageddon is only it must be near.
Yeah, it's all, you only have a couple of days that you have to entertain people. That's the bonus for this.
Right. Well, Hanukkah we got 8 days, and so that's 8 little presents you got to get for the kids, and and then my son's birthday is the 31st, so it gets muddled.
Oh man, that's when I don't know how old's your son?
He's going to be 9.
Oh, so he's old enough to know that his birthday and Christmas are not the same thing. I was like, if I had a kid, until they're like 4 or 5, I'd just trick them.
Right. Just well, no, we were getting the whole New Year's Eve thing was sort of folded in. Oh, those fireworks are for you. Yeah. But then again, he wouldn't stay up that late. But, he's pretty smart. He knows. And we already had his birthday party, so who knows what's going to happen on the actual day.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk about some NBA. There's a lot of things to talk about. And, where do you want to jump off on first?
I think let's kind of hit on this George Karl thing really quick, just because it's kind of blown up a little bit. Kenyon Martin's Twitter was astounding yesterday, and he was really going off. George Karl, in the things that he said, and for anyone listening that doesn't know, he basically equated some of the personality conflicts that he had with Carmelo and Kenyon Martin, related the problems that they had relating to the fact that those two grew up without fathers. Of course, that really kind of slights their mothers, who did a pretty good job raising them. I mean, they are successful people, and for the most part, I don't think either one of them ever been in any kind of trouble. So I don't know where that comes from. But, Carmelo's father died when he was 2 of cancer. So at the very least, it's insensitive. Now, when you read the whole passage, it was very empathetic. It was, he was actually trying to come up with a reason why he couldn't relate to these guys, and he said that the reason was they didn't have their dads around, and he had a very sheltered childhood full of his father was very protective, and then when he got to college, his college coach was like a father figure to him, and so he had all of this guidance, and so I get what he was saying, but the way he said it was problematic. It's going to be taken as veiled racism. I don't think George Karl is a racist. I don't know how you can be an NBA head coach for 35 years and be a racist. I just don't think that that's a sustainable thing. But the way he said it, he probably just should have not said it in the book.
Right. I mean, it's funny because when you're in your own bubble, those things do seem reasonable, I imagine, while you're writing them. And then when they get out there, you realize. But I mean, there's no question. Is there a train of thought that you can sort of follow? The idea being, and he didn't have a strong father figure in his life, and so they completely, rebelled against what George Karl would have represented as a coach, or what he was trying to demand as a coach in his position. I suppose that's what he's trying to say, but And like, when I was coaching at the high school I was when I was an assistant, the head coach would talk about that, where we would look at the players that we did have, issues with in terms of following rules. And, he would point out sometimes that, like a lot of the times it's the kids that don't have fathers who tend to, there seem to be some more than enough to look at it as a pattern, but doesn't really excuse anything, because your job as a coach is to connect with your players.
Right, exactly. Well, here's the thing. I grew up in a single parent household. My parents divorced when I was like 3. But my mom was way harder than my dad would have ever been. So, I was ready for coaching when I got to basketball and had that coach. That was easy. It's like, I just got to run this play this way and maybe do some suicides. Fine. No problem. The punishment is running. Sign me up.
Right, and I think that is independent of who is raising you, as far as whether it's a mother or it's a father. You can get that, whatever he is sort of veiled talking about, discipline, or I guess it's what he's trying to say. But I mean, I guess, and again, the point is that it's the male figure. It's fraught with a lot of things. It's hard to sort of get to the bottom of that. Especially what's weird to me is that George Karl's offense, for instance, was very loose. And didn't really demand much. And so I kind of have a hard time picturing, scenes where he would be in their faces, because he never really seemed like that kind of coach anyway. So, like, when you read that passage, is that the impression that you were getting? Was that like he was trying to coach the crap out of them, and they were simply saying, "F you, I'm not going to do that"?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was trying to justify why they didn't have more success in Denver. And, that's just problematic anyway. Like, it's hard to diagnose these things after the fact. I mean, they didn't have the greatest personnel. That's one problem. But they also didn't play defense. And this was another thing, and I thought Kenyon Martin was fantastic for saying this. In the book, George Karl calls out Carmelo for not being involved in playing defense. Kenyon Martin says, well, George Karl never coached defense, so what do you expect? So, again, all of these coach tell-all books, man, I wish that these guys would just stick to telling funny stories and heartwarming stories and things like that, because when they get into this stuff where they're criticizing former players, it makes you question. Like, first of all, let's just consider this book George Karl's retirement from basketball. He's not getting another job after this, right? Because there's too much. This is like Phil with his posse comment. Like, you may not have meant it that way, but it's going to be taken that way, and you've got to be smarter about this stuff. And in Phil's book, he dumped all over Kobe, and of course then winds up coaching him again. So that's kind of weird. But I think that your job as a coach is to foster and build relationships, to foster those relationships, and then to treat those relationships with some respect, and to keep them private, because your players need to trust you. And if you're going to tell the media this stuff, think about how are players going to react to coaches that are coaching them now after all of these coaching tell-all books have come out. Right. If you're a player in your mid-20s, are you going to coach? I mean, with Steve Kerr, maybe it's a little bit different, but what about a guy like Jason Kidd? Okay, so if you're Jabari Parker, who we're going to talk about at some point today, if you're Jabari Parker, are you going to trust Jason Kidd? Jason Kidd is going to write a tell-all book in 15 years about the time that Jabari Parker, I don't know, stubbed his toe and didn't want to practice or something stupid like that. So I think it's problematic for the NBA and basketball as a whole, not just George Karl in this one particular instance, but it's a bad look one way or the other, no matter how he meant it.
And to your point, and by the way, just so in case it's for perspective, you coached in Europe, pros. You coach high school now. I coached high school, and so while it's not the NBA, there is a similar dynamic, believe it or not, a coach and player relationship that goes on throughout these levels. And we've Phil Jackson's talked about it too in a lot of his books, where the players will still need that coaching figure, that information in that direction. They've been trained to have it that way all the way since they were little kids. So, our perspective actually is valid on this kind of thing. And so the other thing about George Karl is, like you said, he's not getting another job. And he's had health issues. So clearly he needs to, probably to me it sounds like he needs to sell this book. He needs money. Publishers. You
the
know,
publishers for sure saw this stuff and they just saw the money printing.
right?
You know?
Yeah, and he probably is looking at that going, I'm going to be around for another 20-some years, whatever it is, and maybe in my bank account, and so it's like I wouldn't want to get in the way of him, making money off of his off a book, but he'll have to know that this is going to be a real problem for him, and he's going to take a lot of crap, and either he cares or he doesn't. But again, the point in the learning thing for this for other coaches, like you said, is that it's not really okay on every level to sort of pull the you didn't have a father so you're not coachable card, because that just sort of says, all right, well, you're just some sort of relic from a time when coaches could paddle players or whatever, and that we haven't had that situation since the 80s probably. And he did coach in the 80s. I believe he was a head coach in the 80s, right? So that's probably, what he's kind of clung to this whole time, when a lot of the younger coaches understand that dynamic doesn't really work. And you know what? It probably didn't even work back then. It is what it was, but it wasn't the best way to do it.
So back to the relationship with players thing, like I value my relationship with my players more than I value winning a game or having a nice offense or any of that stuff. And the school that I work for, they actually leverage that relationship I have with those players to improve the kids' grades and their study habits and things like that, because they know that those kids, they text me this week. We've been off for finals. Those kids text me almost every day, because we're friends, right? Like they respect me because I respect them. And I treat them like adults. And I think that one of the problems with the old school coaches in the NBA was that the way that they were coached in college is how they try to coach these adults with money. And that's a problem. You need to treat them like Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, the guys, Spoelstra, the guys that are sticking around for a long time. They don't treat these guys like they're college kids. They treat them like professionals. And so I wonder if George Karl has, this kind of thing. I don't know. I've never been to one of his practices. I've seen him coach. He's not a yeller or anything like that. But I wonder if maybe he gets pushed back in practice. Like if he tries to yell, you can't be one way on game day and another way in practice. You got to coach the same way and be consistent. And in particular, when you're dealing with adults, it just, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting thing, and like what we said, what we've discovered here is about the necessity to communicate with your players, because you will hear that refrain. You're not here to be their friend, right? Like you can't coach them like you're their friend. I remember I had an assistant who. Oh boy. Anyway, it was not a good situation, and he tried to pull that out on me as if was my motivation. By the way, my motivation was never like to be friends with the players either. I wanted to create a situation where they all wanted to be part of the program and didn't want to transfer somewhere else. Okay, I wanted to give them a situation where they can come in here and that they're going to improve. It's going to be fun. We're going to win. Those are the things. Now, becoming friendly with me probably is tied in with that anyway. But like when he pulled that out on me, it probably should have been the end of our relationship then, and I didn't, and that's another lesson learned. But at any rate, so I think that's people. It's a hard thing to tread, and it's hard to figure out what it all means. To me, my motivation, I think, is it's almost the same but different in the sense that I wanted to create a situation where the kids felt safe. They felt like it's very stable. They'll know every day who I'm going to be, and they know they're going to improve. They know I'm trying to get them to improve, and then through the course of that, we should have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. We're all on the same team at the end of the day.
Right. And I can't be your friend like overnight. I mean, we became friends overnight, but other than that, I'm not going to be, that takes a while. I'm not instantly going to be really good friends and love, my players over one day. It just takes time. I want to bond. I want to hear about them. I want to have these. That's my favorite thing, by the way. And you see Popovich do it when he sits aside with one player and they kind of chat about probably wine or whatever they're chatting about. Those are always my absolute favorite moments of coaching.
Yeah, I do my best to make sure I get some one-on-one time with every single kid that I coach, and I try to get them to rotate their seating on the bench so they get to sit next to me, and we can talk about things that are happening in the game, and I can kind of get Because I try to use every single teachable moment I try to use, because I just don't get enough of them. Like coaching high school kids is a little different than coaching in college or the pros or whatever, where you have all this time. So I just try to maximize all that stuff and to make it the relationship good, which is what it seems. It seems like George Karl has been poor at that. He got fired after winning 57 games.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's just talk about that for a second, because in that they were the favored team in that series. They lost to the Warriors, right?
Right.
And so we broke all those games down. And the biggest issue I had, it wasn't even defense. It was that their open offense that he ran, which is very loose and no structure at all, looks great in Mile High when you're in the regular season. But when they needed to get good shots down the stretch in a close game, they got the worst shots of all time. And that you simply couldn't win a playoff game that way. And those 4 games they lost were, I think they probably had control of those games throughout, and then they couldn't hold on to it simply because they end up taking quick 20-footers, early in the shot clock with no balance on the floor, and they come right back down and get scored on. So it was very frustrating for me to watch that, even though I tend to like having, a free-form offense, but you got to have much more structure to that, and you got to be able to have go-to things in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. So a little bit of news that just broke. One of the guys on that Nuggets squad, J.R. Smith, he's going to be out for 14 weeks after his thumb surgery, which is problematic for the Cavs because they're already shorthanded at the point guard slot. I don't know. I think that this could be either they're going to have to stop coasting the guys that are superstars, or they're going to lose some games and potentially lose that first seed to Toronto.
Did I have a dream that Kevin Love was hurt?
Yeah, he's got a knee issue. I don't know if it's an injury or just like a bother. I haven't seen anything that says he's going to miss significant time, and if I had to guess, I'd say he plays Christmas Day.
Okay. Yeah, no, that is an interesting problem. Now, they don't care if they're second in the conference anyway, right? That doesn't really matter to them. And if we do a quick look at the standings, do you know what the standings are right now? Here we go. They are, they're a game and a half up, and then 5 games up on the 3rd seed. So, it does feel like more than a quarter of the way through the season that they probably got a decent hold on that, top 1 or 2 spots, right?
Yeah, they'll probably be the 2 seed, I would guess. J.R. Smith, while he may not be – he's not one of their 3 best players. He is for sure their 4th, and he is kind of important for what they do. He was the key to them winning the finals. Obviously LeBron and Kyrie were the superstars there, but J.R. Smith played some really great defense, and he hit some huge shots. So they're gonna miss his production, but also they're already shorthanded.
Yes. And you know what? Yeah, right. All those things you said. The shooting is really going to be key because they're so good at that. Now, they end up having some shooting. I've never really honestly been sold about like Dunleavy as a shooter, but he at least somehow they probably have to have that one step closer to him to give that space to the other guys, like in theory, because he's out there. And then who else is going to get those minutes? Like Liggins?
Yeah, I would assume it's going to be Liggins. And maybe they find more minutes for Felder out there, like maybe next to Kyrie. But that's weird and too small, and they can't defend anybody. Like they could maybe play that lineup against like Portland. Mm-hmm. But they'll get roasted on the defensive end.
And by the way, I'm just kind of, just for fun, I just called it the last 3 games for the Cavs stats. You know how many minutes LeBron has played the last 3 games? 40.
Each game.
Each game. He's averaging 40
leading
minutes
the league
a game.
in minutes.
Now,
he's leading the league in minutes right now.
You want to know how many minutes Kyrie played in the last 3 games? 40.
40. Oh,
39.7. So that's a real interesting problem here because, and they're winning, so it's not like that's not working, but this is going to be a serious problem for them if they continue to grind it out like that.
Well, LeBron has been playing for 13 years, right? Like he's played longer than Magic. He played longer than Bird. I think I don't know how many years Dominique played, but LeBron has played a ton of minutes. I mean, he just passed Moses Malone on the all-time scoring list. I don't think people realize, because he's only 31.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize the mileage he has on that body because he never gets hurt, and this is incredible. But at this point in his career, like he's at like 55,000 minutes or something like that, not including playoffs, not including all the Olympic stuff.
Yeah, that's at least, I think, 2.5, 3 seasons, I think, extra.
Yeah, he's been a machine. But, eventually every machine's going to break down. Father Time is undefeated.
Right, and not even saying he's going to get hurt per se, but you can just see there's a lack of bounce. He's not. I mean, his defense, and I was watching a little bit of it recently, is really he's just and he could. We all know he can turn it up and be a lot better, but there's a lot of instances here where he's just sort of not interested. And and I get it. I sympathize with the fact that all those minutes are racking up, and he knows how important the regular season is or not. So it's I kind of like to have a standard and think that in the regular season you still should play hard and really do it. But I'm not going to really go off on that necessarily. But the problem is if it's going to keep the games closer because of that, and he's got to play more minutes because of that, and then at the end of the year he's tired because of all that, more tired. Well, then that's a chain of events that you could have connected to him coasting earlier.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, he's playing like 39 minutes a night on the season. And he's probably coasting through at least 10 of those. I mean, like you said, he calls up the defense when he needs it. But it's still, he's out there on the court. It's still up and down. It's miles on those legs. I don't know. It concerns me because he is 13 years in now, and you do need to start taking care of the machine, right? A lot of people, they talk about during the 80s and everyone played 82 games and all this stuff, but they're taking better care of their bodies now, and just because they did it 30 years ago doesn't mean it was right. The right way to go is what we're going toward, which is trying to get rid of the back-to-backs, limiting minutes, monitoring workload, things like that. I mean,
well, I will say this, even though whether it's right or not, the comparison is there. Like, these guys did it on commercial travel, right? And so meanwhile, the other people here are saying, oh, I'm getting hurt, I can't do it now. So, I kind of get that there is that old school comparison there. And I also think that, yes, they should stop that, should extend the season, make it longer as far as days, and so there's less back-to-backs without question. And then for sure, it's great that they have, private travel and cryo chambers and whatever. And it's the problem here is that LeBron could easily do his 2-week sabbatical to Miami, whatever you want to take from that, and then he'll come back as good as new. He looks fine. I mean, he took off 2 feet off near the dotted line for a dunk and wasn't going to make it and ended up losing the ball on the way up. But I think he lost it sort of because he realized it wasn't going to be a dunk. You could just see it there, and of course I got so much shit from everyone saying I'm a hater because all I do is point that out. But by the way, I do sort of relish the notion of the underdog, right? So if the Bucks are playing the Cavs, I'm probably going to sort of get this visceral cheering for the Bucks just because they're young, they're upstart, they're not intimidated. It's sue me, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Because it's easier to get excited about the new thing. I mean, this is where we take LeBron for granted. Okay, LeBron I am at the point with LeBron where if someone wants to argue that he is better than Michael Jordan or has had a better career or whatever you want to do, I'm not going to argue against that. Now, I still think Jordan has been better, but it is more of a 1A, 1B conversation than it is one and a huge gap and LeBron is 2. LeBron has been that good. And I watched Jordan. I mean, Jordan was my guy when I was a kid. So of course I have these visions of grandeur with Jordan. And I saw every single big moment Michael Jordan was in. But LeBron has just been that good. But we take him for granted. And this is we could go on this huge societal conversation, and we could talk about the same reason we took him for granted is why we have Donald Trump as president. If you really want to go dig deep in it, the 24-hour news cycle, and it's almost overexposure, right? And where the incredible has become mundane with LeBron. We don't marvel at the fact that this guy is 6'9". He's Karl Malone size, and yet he has guard skills. I mean, he literally is a 5-position player. He can do everything. The only thing he can't do well is shoot. But he doesn't even have to, and he still scores for his career like 26 or 27 points a game. So I think it's overexposure of that. The decision didn't help, but I think it's because people don't have much nuance when it comes to sports. They don't understand that, like, these guys are basically indentured servants. They don't have a choice in where they go. They don't have a choice in the direction of the franchise. They don't have a choice in a lot of this stuff, you know. Yes, they are compensated very well, but they're not compensated as well as the owners are or the league. So they're still, like, within that hierarchy, they're still, you know, kind of the middle class. And the middle class is just perpetually screwed in every single, you know, no matter how you want to look at each part of life, the middle class is always getting screwed. So, yeah, that's my little rant.
Well, to be fair to the owners a little bit here, the players don't have the expenses that the owners have.
Absolutely.
And
or the risk.
You know, so that 51-49 split, while it's in favor of the owners, you know, they have to run stadiums and all that kind of stuff too. But listen, everybody's doing pretty damn well. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is why we got this new CBA so quick, because, you know, the money is coming in and everybody's happy with it. And that's great. That's good stuff. And they added a lot of stuff to take care of guys when they're not, you know, it's not the LeBrons that need this money for when they're done. You know, it's the guys that play 3 or 4 years, you know, tear both of their Achilles or something like that. And then, you know, hey, now I've got to go find a regular job. And that they need that little bit of a safety net, right? Like, and it's great that got taken care of. That's awesome. I think that this is like one of the best CBAs in any sport in recent memory.
Right. And then the salary cap itself was revolutionary when they put it in, and it really is, you know, the model now going forward. And I think, you know, I wish perhaps the rest of the country and our politics could work more like that, because there seems to be a common goal, whereas other, you know, regular businesses, you know, will sink our economy to have a positive quarter, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, so there's a partnership with the NBA, with the league and the players. There's a partnership, right? The teams and the players, there's a partnership. Whereas with business in America, business in general in the world, their goal is to separate you from your money.
Right.
So they're almost competing with you for your money. Like, they want, like, Apple wants me to buy a new MacBook Pro, Dell wants me to buy their laptop. And meanwhile, it's like, well, I need to eat, right? So they want to compete with these other things that you want to do. Like, Apple wants you to buy a laptop and then buy a movie on iTunes, and the movie theater wants me to come there and watch Rogue One again, like I did this week, right? So,
right. Well, yeah. Okay. Or the more nefarious version of that is the bank wants you to buy this house so they can post a positive quarter, not giving a shit if the entire world's economy will collapse after that quarter because they got their one number they needed to get. Or Wells Fargo will start signing people up to credit cards. You know, hell, Facebook charged me a boost of my page at 11:45 at night on my time. Somebody did a post for $180. And I've never spent more than like $10 on a boost of a post on Facebook. Right. And I've had to spend an hour of my time calling them and following up and trying to insist that I never did that and how it was my fault. I accidentally pressed the button. And I can assure them with beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm not pressing the buttons on my Facebook page at 11:45 at night. And meanwhile, you know, in the context of like what Wells Fargo did, and she tells me we get these calls all the time. Well, you got to start to wonder, you know, if Facebook has the same pressures that Wells Fargo does, are they just starting to, you know, charge people boosts and then claiming that they're, you know, accidental, that you did it? I don't know.
And just hoping it slips through the cracks. Yeah, you know.
Oh, and by the way, it was going to slip through the cracks. Some random way, I just happened to wander on to my analytics for the boost, which I almost don't do very often, and I saw it, like, you know, like in the middle of it. It had already been on for eight days of a 17-day run. It was crazy.
Yeah, not to get too deep into like economic theory, but the unsustainability of the 3% profit margins year over year is an issue, especially as we go. We're like, America is like already like an 80% or 85% service economy. Mm-hmm. So we don't make anything. We don't produce anything. It's literally service and agriculture. And so we're going to have a real issue going forward. I need to just start a podcast that's just about not basketball, so that I can get these thoughts out. But yeah, we're going to have a real issue. This is where, like, looking at these countries that are starting to do the living wage is going to be the model for America going forward. And it's probably not. It's probably 10 to 15 years away from having that conversation, but we're getting there. All right. Sorry, we should go back to basketball.
Okay, so getting back to basketball and living wages, an interesting question came up on Twitter comparing Harrison Barnes and Andrew Wiggins. And as we were talking about it, the next logical player to throw in there is Jabari Parker. And look at these three guys. And I know you were surprised at how many points Jabari Parker is scoring this year. And I think playing in Milwaukee, a lot of people listening to this will probably be surprised as well. So, what is so surprising to you that he's up to 22 points a game?
Yeah, he's scoring 20.1. Wiggins is at 22, and Harrison's at like 20.4. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize. I mean, this is gonna sound really nitpicky, but I thought he would be in the 17 to 18 points a game range, and it's only a difference of 2 points, but the 20-point mark is kind of like the magic number in the NBA. Like, you're a scorer. If you put up 20 points a game, you're a scorer. You are getting buckets. And the fact that he's shooting as well as he is, he's shooting 48.5% from the field, 38.5% from three, on 3 attempts a game. So that's legit. Like, he's actually shooting threes and he's making them. Mm-hmm. It's really impressive. And I'm going to say this again here. I've said it on Twitter and been lambasted for it, but he looks so much more athletic. I mean, obviously, from a body standpoint, he looks more fit. But the way he moves on the court, his quickness off the dribble, and just his explosiveness in general, he dunked in traffic from the circle at the free throw line during the week. He has dunked on so many guys this year. And the big knock on him coming in, remember, he was not an athlete.
Right.
He was Carmelo Anthony as a scorer, but he just wasn't athletic.
Well, here's what happens in case people don't recognize, like when you have the ACL tear, you have to just assume that they're going to repair it and it's going to be stronger than it was before. And like, that's not even the issue. But then in the rehab, you end up doing explosive and flexibility training that you probably never had done before. And so you're now moving a lot more efficiently and you're loading a lot better to jump and to move. And so, it's kind of like when Steph, after his ankle stuff and he learned to open up his hips, he became a different athlete out of that and much more explosive and quick. And it's the same thing here with Jabari Parker. So the knee is no longer the issue. The mental part of the knee is also, I think he's gotten over that. And what you have left is a guy who's now trained in the way that he probably could have and should have done earlier. And we're going to probably see kids younger develop more of these better habits, even if it's just foam rolling to get your hips loose, and then understanding the correct way to get your butt back and load to jump. So now we're having the benefits of both worlds here, almost as if the knee injury was like a good thing for him. And here we are. When I said 22 points a game, I'm sorry. I was looking at the per 36 because I wanted to normalize to compare. The one thing about this, though, which is amazing to me, is how similar these numbers are between Barnes, Parker, and Wiggins. It's like they're almost identical, really, when you go through the per 36.
Yeah, and I think the big difference is you can account for, Jabari's on a better team than Barnes and Wiggins. He's got Giannis there playing point guard, and he's super dangerous. I just think that if you swapped any of these guys, you'd probably get pretty similar production, which is incredible. Harrison Barnes was my pick for most improved player this year, just because I know that award is generally chosen by he jumped from 9 points a game to 18 points a game. He must be the most improved, where really it's about minutes and opportunity. And I knew Harrison was going to be a higher usage. This year, he's using about 27% of possessions when he's on the court, which, he was at 35 for a while there. I think that maybe his touches are going down just a little bit, but obviously Dallas has huge personnel problems, and that can account for a lot of the issues that he's having as far as, when you're comparing the numbers with Jabari. But
Well, I have an issue here in what you said.
uh-oh.
Now, let's look at Milwaukee for a second because you said that he's on a better team.
Yeah.
Right now, they're 13-14, losing record, ninth in the conference in the East. And look at the guys who are playing the top minutes. You got Giannis and Jabari, the top two guys playing the top 2 minutes players. Then after that, you got Tony Snell, Matthew Dellavedova, Malcolm Brogdon, John Henson. I mean, that's not like world killers. Right now, you want to compare that to the Minnesota?
Okay, but they're having a better year, I should say.
Okay.
Right? Like, they're more competitive. The Bucks have been more competitive this year. And part of that is because Giannis is maybe a top 10 player now.
Yeah.
And Karl Anthony Towns, the hype for him has outweighed what his impact has been on the court. His numbers look great, but his impact has not been great. His defense has been bad.
Okay.
And so that's a big issue with Wiggins. And I think that, a lot of – and now his shooting has been much improved this year. Shooting 37% from three. And his free throw rate, he's shooting 6.5 free throws a game. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But again, the poor defense is part of why, like, his BPM. His defensive box plus minus is negative 3.1. That's not all him.
Right. No, because there's an effort issue with him sometimes. And I got to go through it more this year because I used to see it a lot last year where he'd miss a shot and then he'd hang his head. Or the team would miss a shot. He kind of jogged down, hanging his head. Really bad body language, which, it's not necessarily just the kumbaya notion. It is you're not engaged, and then when you have to play defense, now you're not ready, and you just kind of like let those things bother you, whatever it is. And there's no question that that's a team-wide issue with the Timberwolves, which is really just bizarre. And if it's a troubling sign. If Thibodeau can't get in there, and defense is usually the easier thing to teach and kind of install. We saw that when he first took over in Chicago. He was able to really quickly get that up and running. If he has that much trouble and it continues throughout the rest of this year, that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, this is the body language thing is part of why I'm higher on LaVine than I am on Wiggins. And I think of those two, LaVine is more untouchable than Wiggins. I think they're more likely to trade Wiggins than LaVine. LaVine has a scorer's mentality. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Russell Westbrook. How can Russ keep shooting all these bad shots? Because he doesn't remember the bad shots he took before. He's only thinking about that next shot. And so LaVine has kind of got that little, whatever that gene is that allows you to do that, he's got that.
Well, also look at it this way real quick. LaVine and Russ were both sort of slightly unheralded coming out of high school. And made their marks early in their college careers and had that chip on their shoulder. Well, Wiggins has been anointed for a long time and has had that pressure on him. And we've seen that in the past of kids who haven't even made it as far as Wiggins, who have kind of struggled with that weight and have not been able to translate that into a ferociousness that will get them over the top. Listen, the fact that he is like he is, and he's probably just a nice, quiet kid, and he's scoring 20 a game is great.
22 a game.
It's like hard to criticize the guy. But defensively, if you don't have that chip on your shoulder and you want to get up in those faces and prove to everybody that you belong, then you're going to have your lunch handed to you every night, and that's going to hurt the team as well.
Well, it's funny that we're comparing him. One of the guys we're comparing him to is Harrison Barnes, who's almost the same. Like, these guys had a very similar path to the NBA. Heralded in high school. Harrison Barnes, the Black Falcon. That was a high school thing, right? Like, that whole thing, like, he was thinking about his brand in high school, and then he had kind of now he stayed in college longer, but he had this weird college career, was still a lottery pick. Of course, Wiggins was the number one pick, but kind of up and down in Golden State. Of course, what they were asking him to do, he didn't have to do very much, and now is starting to come around now that he's getting more opportunities. With Wiggins, he's got all the tools to be the best defender in the league. He's fast. He is very agile. He can jump out of the gym. He's got long arms, and he's smart. He knows what he's supposed to do. It is just really strange. And this was why everyone was so high on the Timberwolves coming into the season, is because of his athleticism. You've got Ricky Rubio, who is already a really good defender at the point guard. And then Karl Anthony Towns, who's, people were saying that he was going to be in the top 3 for MVP voting this year. And so, they've regressed defensively. And we've talked about this before. I think it's time for Tom Thibodeau to readdress his scheme. Instead of trying to force these guys into it, find something that works.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he's a pretty strict no-middle defense guy, for instance, in ice and everything like that. And I went to the UCLA game on Monday, and they play like pack line and allow sort of force middle. And I was squirming in my seat watching it. I mean, we had like great seats and watching real close. And it's like I can't fathom like that way of defense, especially in the NBA. And Western Michigan was like hurting them that way. They were getting all these offensive rebounds. They were collapsing the defense on the middle penetration. So, I don't know if the scheme. I'm gonna have to take a really deep dive. I lament that I haven't done a Bucks breakdown, and I really haven't done a Wolves breakdown either on their defense, and I need to because I suspect that's what we're going to see is that they're letting a lot of the middle penetration and it's collapsing everything. And then so the solution to me would have been no, just make them do it better, because. That shouldn't be hard. You should be able to, as a professional, master that notion of how to position your feet. Now, it's possible that they're still just stuck in the ways of Sam Mitchell. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Mitchell coached it forcing middle. Force him to the big man. That's where the big man can help you, right? Well, that's when you had Kareem or somebody, okay. But nowadays, and with the way people finish, you're just going to get the big man in foul trouble.
Yeah, and Karl Anthony Towns, he commits a lot of goaltending violations. So,
he does. Okay.
Yeah.
Good stat there.
Yeah, he does. I see him do it a lot. He actually gets away with a few too. So, I mean, I guess.
But you know what? I don't know. Talking about random stats, that reminds me, we need to get rid of the free throw line rebound.
What do you mean?
When you're shooting a free throw and you're the defensive player. Like, that should get separated out. I feel like some of these guys are getting 2 or 3 of those a game, and now we're saying, oh, look, he's averaging 12 rebounds a game. I don't know. I feel like we need to separate those out.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I had never really thought about that. It's kind of a freebie. I mean, the rate is like 95%. As a matter of fact, I don't even send my bigs. I send in guards because I think that they're better, like they're a little sneakier, and they're more likely to get them. But also I want my bigs already back on defense.
Yeah. I mean, we used to have a thing where we would press where I have a guy. Actually, when we were shooting free throws, if you can follow this, I put my most athletic guy, if he wasn't shooting it, at the top of the key. And then I would have my 2 guards down there, and I would have the athletic guy time it so that as the ball is hitting the rim, he's already like full sprint, and he can either try and get a tip, and if he didn't get the tip, boom, we were double teaming him with that guy and one of my guards, whatever, on that whatever side, and then into a press. And it was really cool, and it worked. I just, the only thing I had to do was tell the referees before the game, like, just so you know, we're timing that. So, if he's too early, call it, but that's what we're doing. And we rarely had that called. In fact, I didn't do that after my first year, and I probably should have kept doing that.
I'm stealing that.
What's that?
Stealing.
Stealing. Do you have a guy who's athletic like that?
I do, absolutely. I'm totally stealing that.
Okay, it's like that Michael Jordan tip dunk that he'd get on the free throw. And we literally had it every time. It was really fun. And by the way, another reason why you should, take notes for every practice and keep them somewhere because, that stuff you kind of forget. All of a sudden the next season starts and you don't put something in that you did and you don't realize it. I've actually been having lunch a little bit with some of my ex-players from back in 2000 because we ran a triangle back then better than we did it when I did it the last 3 years. And I kind of wanted to pick their brain to remind myself, like, how did we teach it then that was different? Because clearly we did.
Yeah, well, we need to do the revamped triangle tutorial.
I filmed a lot of it, by the way, and having then seen some of the Warriors practices and how they do it, I realized I kind of want to add even more or refilm it or something. But for sure, coming up before the summer, I'm going to have that done. And if you got to come to LA to help me finish it, let's do it. I'm
in. I'm all in on that. You know what? Hey, while we're talking about the triangle, I got into an interesting conversation on Twitter about the triangle because people don't realize every single team runs elements of the triangle. Right?
Well, it's not my fault they don't realize it.
It's just the weirdest thing, man, that people like everyone runs everything. Like the good teams run everything. The Spurs, they run triangle, they run horns, they run motion, like they do everything. Pick and roll, everything. It's the bad teams that don't run stuff. And that the thing is, when Phil got to New York and he wanted them to run the triangle, it was because they weren't running anything under Woodson. They were running it was all pick and roll.
Okay.
And ISO, right? It was give Melo the ball on the wing, let him jab step 7 times, and take a shot.
Right.
And that was it. So it made sense that he was, and he even said this. He was like, I just want a system in place, and the triangle is the system he knew.
Right.
So
yeah. I mean, I have to do this video. I'm going to do a video soon on the Knicks, just showing you their triangle offense sets. They only do it like 5-6 times a game, so I might take 20 or 30 of them to show you the shots they're getting out of it, because they're terrific, and for the most part. And so it's like, and then if other teams are running elements of it, it's not like, because then the argument goes, well, they're not running the pure triangle, so it doesn't really count. But like the bottom line is, if you want to trash the triangle, well, then you can't sort of separate and say, well, just that element is good, or that element is good. Oh, that part's fine, but their whole thing is bad. You can't say that.
Yeah, well, the triangle. The reason I like the triangle is because it gets guys used to cutting backdoor on the overplay. That's my favorite part of it. Is kind of the blind pig, right? Mm-hmm. On the overplay, trying to make the pass to the wing or whatever. You get these guys used to beating the defender backdoor. And so the layups that come out of the triangle, like Jordan was all about the mid range, right? But Jordan was amazing at the mid range. So of course that's what you're going to see there. But people forget about all the backdoor cuts to Scotty, and I mean Rodman on the backdoor cuts even. Mm-hmm. It just, I don't know. Horace Grant got paid because he was good at making a cut.
Yeah. I mean, then he also developed that really good mid range too, and just about beat the Bulls with the Magic that one year with just on that alone. To me, the triangle is simply an offense that generates open shots. Now, if you're the mid-range guy, it's going to generate open shots for you in the mid-range. If you're a three-point shooter, it's going to, Steve Kerr never had problems getting three-point shots when he, out of the offense. And so that's really what I would stress. And I think the other best part about it are a couple different things. There's always a progression to something else. There isn't just like we try flop, you didn't get a shot, okay, pick and roll on top and hope for the best. No, there is always a progression right into that. When I would coach it, I would say I never ever want to see someone dribble the ball from the wing to the top, hold up a finger and call a play. No, it's one pass and blam, you're right back into one of your attacks based on where the ball is. And that's huge because the shot clock is running down, and you can generate 4 or 5 extra good shots a game that way, and that could be the difference.
That's one of the hardest things to teach for younger players is getting into the offense from wherever you are.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone wants to – their natural reaction is – and we're going way in the weeds on coaching here, but their natural reaction is, oh, man, I've got to get to my spot. Well, your spot is wherever you are. And, I try to get a pistol action started before my guys even hit half court.
Yeah.
Nice. It's like the guys on the wing, let's get into it. Why are you waiting? This is where my D'Antoni love comes from, because D'Antoni, everyone, the 7 seconds or less is obviously everyone knows that. But what you don't realize is that in that 7 seconds, they're running 3 actions.
Yeah.
There's so much. It's not like just dribble down and pull up a jumper. No, they're running stuff, and they're just getting into everything quick. And this is the Spurs, when they had all their motion stuff a couple years ago, they would push the ball up. They wouldn't, Tony Parker didn't dribble it up every time. They were looking ahead to pass the ball up. And, Danny Green would have it a lot. But normally when Danny Green has it, you wind up in a hammer, set or something like that. So, yeah, I just wish more people that watch the NBA would realize, hey, the triangle, it's not this old, outdated thing. And I get that now you can kind of zone up against the triangle, but this triangle still works against the zone. Otherwise, the Warriors wouldn't have won the title 2 years ago and 73 games last year, because they run a good 5% to 10% of their stuff is triangle stuff.
Oh, it's more than that for sure. I mean, every time they enter the ball, the low post and split at the elbow, that's triangle right there, and they do that, half the time almost probably when you look at
Jason Kidd runs all of his stuff that way.
Yeah, and exactly, Jason. That's why, Jason Kidd deserves. That's why the Bucks deserve a breakdown. The last thing about the triangle also, and I'm writing a book about this. I'm going to write a book about offense, and then with a triangle bent. But the idea that whatever offense you run needs to be able to let your players get in a position where they're running before they catch the ball, sprinting from across the floor 10, 15 feet at a time. And, you think of pinch post when you throw the ball and now you're sprinting before they hand it off to you, or the potential for the handoff, or any kind of handoffs themselves, dribble handoffs. You're running and then catching. And I think that's what Tex Winter understood, was that you needed to get as many of those opportunities as you can out of your half-court offense. And that's the problem, I think, with the crappy teams. Because the crappy teams run offense. They run their sets. But I would think that most of those teams, the mileage that they run in the half court on the offensive end is low. They're simply standing around a lot. They have 2 or 3 guys who aren't cutting around very much in efforts to simplify it or whatever, and they just make it worse. That's why the Nets are sort of a revelation, because they're playing that way. They're hoping they get hot, and if they do, they stay in the game a lot longer than they would normally, and that's the recipe right there.
Yeah, well, we saw that against the Warriors.
Yeah,
yesterday.
And they weren't even on fire, right, from 3, were they? No,
they actually were just playing good defense, and they were just making open shots when they were available. And it's smart. I mean, I try to teach offense in that every move that you make, you're just trying to gain a half a second, right? And if you can pile up enough of these cuts and screens and things like that, you wind up with like a second, right? If you get a second window, that's a wide open shot. And, the key is you just got to keep the defense moving and falling behind and falling behind and falling behind. And that's where, like you said, sprinting into your cuts and things like that makes such a huge difference. And in the NBA, you often see a lot of people, they just walking through the motions of the offense till the playoffs, and then you see guys really getting after it.
Yeah. Well, those teams don't make the playoffs, so we don't get to see that true. Either. So anyhow, well, I mean, I think we got a lot of things covered here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think we kind of covered a wide swath of things, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly if you're a coach out there, I think there's some really great nuggets out there that we threw out there for sure, and some good analysis on the Wiggins and stuff. So good stuff. Dave, as always, another good show. And I don't know, anything else you want to leave for us before we end?
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I hope everybody checks out of the internet for the weekend. I mean, I know that means that they might not listen to this podcast until next week, but enjoy time with your family and try to just relax and enjoy the games on Sunday, because it's actually 5 decent games. Yeah,
we got the rematch early.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Knicks Celtics is going to be fun, dare I say. The Knicks have been okay, and the Celtics are finally healthy.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely a good barometer game for the Knicks.
Yeah. The only issue is Porzingis with the bruised knee. I'm hoping that he's able to play.
Me too, absolutely. That would be a bummer if he didn't play. That would be a Scrooged moment for us. So. Well, Thanks for coming on the show, Dave. As always, we will see you again next week. We're going to do a post-game show. When do we decide to do that? Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay.
Thursday
night. We might even do the early game. Is that what we were thinking?
Yeah, I think so. It's Boston, Cleveland. I think that's a little more interesting than the Lakers, Mavericks.
Yeah, for sure. And so people might not turn over to Lakers, Mavericks, and TNT. So maybe we'll capture some of that earlier audience on the East Coast. So stay tuned for that. Lots more coming up. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. Are you in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.